explain the specific bits of the station and train that relate directly to an individual's journey. It will take the complexity out of a trip and explain it using simple but powerful immersive images. And Patrick, I've just really got to wonder, how the hell did anybody take a train before they had the likes of this? How did anybody manage to get through a train station to the right platform and onto the train and onto their allocated seat without this app? How did they do that?
I know, think about the anxiety, Mike, of getting into the train station. Overcome with anxiety. Look, if you want to talk about anxiety, how about all the signage at 24/7, immersed in propaganda? Literally, you're going up the escalators now, and in between the escalators, there's wash your hands, sanitize your hands, and a avatar with a mask. Everywhere you look down, keep your distance, social distance. It's just plastered everywhere. Talk about anxiety, and the mask mandate as well on top of that. So I think the obvious problem is not actually being addressed.
Oh, indeed. But don't worry, because the government's funding an app to sort that out. And another funding is going to Hitachi Europe. And this is all about optimizing passenger flows through train stations. By monitoring people flow, congestion points, and behavior, stations may be optimized to the benefit of railway operators as well as passengers. And staff can quickly get an overview of the situation and promptly deploy countermeasures, making passengers feel more comfortable as they're not left waiting in congested spaces and reducing stress on staff. And so Hitachi say that their proposed solution proposes to leverage existing CCTV infrastructure to calculate and propose an optimal configuration of station facilities, such as gates, escalators, and passageways, to avoid unnecessary passenger congestion. So again, I'm not entirely clear exactly how stations operated in the pre-COVID days, because it clearly it was beyond the wit of man to minimize congestion in stations before they had this type of new facility.
They're talking about optimizing flow, Mike. They can't even optimize the flow of the average toilet at a station. I mean, if they could just sort the toilets out, make sure they're working, they're clean.
Well, that would reduce anxiety for sure.
Bring them into the 21st century. That would be huge in terms of reducing anxiety. I mean, we're not complicated. Humans are pretty simple. Give us working loos,
yes,
place to get a coffee, benches that don't have security and safety tape over them.
Well, now, one of the other projects that I haven't mentioned today, but one of the other projects implements new internals for carriages, so that they can change the seating arrangements, so that you can make
for
COVID to make sure that you can have proper social distancing, that there's no possibility of congestion inside the carriages and so on. It's really amazing. These are really important.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic, yes.
That's great.
But look, if anybody was any doubt about the issue of vaccine passports, and if your life is restricted because you haven't had a vaccine, and you can't get a vaccine passport, or you can't get a vaccine passport that says that you're allowed to travel, we've got to leave it to the Chatham House to tell us how we should feel about that. So have a listen to this.
It gives assurance to the traveller that they are likely to be safe, and it gives assurance to the receiving country that this person is unlikely to be a burden on their health system and unlikely to bring the infection. There is an issue of equity, and that is that people who have been vaccinated may appear to be more privileged than those who have not been vaccinated. In the UK, where our vaccine program has been astonishingly effective, there really is no issue of equity, because vaccine is available for everybody. If you choose not to be vaccinated, then you are electing to put yourself in a different position to those who have accepted to be vaccinated.
So that's the view of Professor David Salisbury from Chatham House. So
apartheid, essentially.
Yes, indeed. Now, just so you understand how qualified this gent is, before joining this is his CV from the Chatham House website. Before joining Chatham House, David Salisbury was Director of Immunisation at the Department of Health until the end of 2013. He was responsible for the National Immunisation Programme and led the introduction of many new vaccines. He is the chair of the Global Certification Commission, chair of the European Certification Commission, member of the Eastern Mediterranean Commission, and a member of the Southeast Asian Commission. And he previously chaired the World Health Organization's Strategy Advisory Group of experts on immunization, the World Health Organization committee that sets the global immunization policy. He also served as a co-chair of the Pandemic Influenza Group of the G7 Global Health Security Initiative, and he continues to lecture and advise on vaccines and vaccination, as well as undertaking ongoing work in polio, malaria, and the development of new vaccines. So he seems to be eminently qualified, does he not, to make such a statement? But what do you think his training is in?
I'm thinking vaccinology, right?
Pediatrics.
Okay.
He's a pediatrician. So I'm not entirely clear how he ended up working with such eminent positions with vaccination, but he's a pediatrician. So
Well, they say a lot of pediatricians, a lot of MDs they become a glorified sales and marketing reps for the pharmaceutical industry. And this is a big complaint we hear time and time again
yes,
from so many different doctors. So what are all these experts on all these committees, Mike, but glorified sales and marketing reps for the transnational pharmaceutical cartel pushing drugs around the world? So this is a big problem. So, you don't have to be like Patrick Vallance and own 600,000 or how many hundreds of thousands of shares in GlaxoSmithKline to be a stakeholder in Big Pharma. There's other people who are stakeholders
too.
As well.
Yes, indeed. A little bit of defense news for you. Well, the Joint Expeditionary Force, of course, this is 10 nations, European nations, including the UK, that share a commitment to democracy. So we should feel good about that. The ministers from the various nations involved in the Joint Expeditionary Force met in Helsinki yesterday, and they set out the roadmap for which they will evolve to tackle shared threats. So this is more defense union, more defense integration. So this is a multinational force made up of 10 like-minded Northern European nations, the UK, which is the framework nation, but also Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden. So they have a shared commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, and that should make everybody feel excellent, as well as a long history of operating together. And they're able to operate wherever in the world any two of its members choose to deploy together. So this is fantastic stuff, but they are very concerned about the possibility of more competition with, who do you think? Russia. Who
Or
else?
China.
But particularly Russia, because this is all about Northern Europe and so on. So that's what they're focused on. They are putting more pressure on Russia.
I don't know about you, Mike, but nothing says democracy like soldiers in ghillie suits and heavy equipment charging up the beach. That's democracy. That's what democracy looks like.
Absolutely, but it gets better because we've got more defence union going on. I remember the left-hand pillar of European defence union was bilateral agreement. So the UK has decided that it's going to create a brand new bilateral agreement on defence and security, a joint declaration, no less, with Germany. So there's Heiko Maas on the right-hand side, Dominic Raab on the left. So they've signed up to this. And what are they talking about? They're talking about a whole host of things, transatlantic relationships. So it's all going to be about Euro-Atlantic perspective. Russia, they're talking, this is all about potential for conflict with Russia and dealing with that. Also China and the Indo-Pacific, Ukraine, Africa, they're very interested in North Africa, of course. They're going to jointly promote a more peaceful, secure and safer world, respect for democracy and the rule of law, global education and human rights, including gender equality, media freedom, freedom of religion and belief. And they're going to address the human rights dimensions, both of climate change and the use of artificial intelligence. So
all the right buzzwords.
All the right buzzwords are there.
Back up on that tweet, Mike. Which one is Heiko and which one is Dominic? You didn't specify. I can't tell the difference.
No, and in fact, it's very hard to tell the difference because they look very similar and they've got the same, more or less, the same flags behind them. So
and they're wearing the same suit. I can't tell which one's Heiko and which one's Dominic. If anybody can help us out,
I think we need some help with that.
Yes.
But in the meantime, of course, Vladimir Putin has been in the news over the last few days. We covered it on Wednesday with respect to the issues over HMS Defender. Well, he was giving a briefing yesterday. This is a nationally broadcast a direct line with Vladimir Putin. It's his annual question and answer session. That was happening yesterday. And let's have a look at what he said. With respect to the HMS Defender issue, you said that he was to the questioner, you said that this puts the world on the brink of a global war. Of course not. He said, even if we had sunk that ship, he went on to say, even if we had sunk that ship, it's nevertheless difficult to imagine that the world would have been put on the brink of a third world war, because those who did this know we would not win a war, or we could not win a war like that. That's very important. The second thing he said is the political component. Recently, a few days ago, a meeting was held in Geneva. Of course, that was the meeting with Joe Biden. And so the question that comes out of this, why was there such a provocation? This was really his main concern. He went on to say, I'm not concerned about this, or that somebody does not respect the choice of the people in Crimea to join Russia. So he was really highlighting the fact that Britain, the United States, refused to accept the fact that people in Crimea wanted to join Russia. He said he has a different concern. Look, now they raised a clamor over the fact that we were conducting exercises on our own territory near the Ukrainian border, and instructed the Defense Ministry to quietly end the drills and withdraw the troops. If this is such a great concern for them, we did so. But instead of responding positively and saying, okay, we understand your reaction to our indignation, what did they do? They approached our borders. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I mean, I appreciate that sometimes there's criticism of our position on this of being too pro-Russian, but it just seems to me, Patrick, that there's provocation after provocation coming from our side of the defense argument, and at the same time we're shouting that Putin is the great provocateur.
No, I think the problem is we're marinated in our own propaganda, and that includes our government ministers and MPs. Most of them are absolutely out to lunch on this issue, because what's the talking point you see time and time again when you listen to the British or the US or the European media? We're concerned about the buildup of Russian troops on the Ukrainian border. What they fail to ever mention is that Russia borders Ukraine. So they're well within their rights to build up their troops or run drills anywhere in their own territory. If the US would restrict its drills to US territory, I'm sure the world would be less tense. But obviously there's people in Washington that would disagree with me on that, because they'd say that the US is running drills all over the world, including along Russia's border, along with NATO, and that makes the world feel safer. So it depends who you believe in that story. But they've twisted this fact and making Russia sound like it's aggressive because it's concerned about NATO pressed right up and encircling Russia from the Baltic states, right around Eastern Europe, and now
Georgia,
and now the underbelly.
Possibility Ukraine. I mean,
further.
clearly, the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO is a red line as far as Russia is concerned. But just very briefly, what are your thoughts on Putin's comment that even if they had sunk HMS Defender, that would not have started a more serious conflict?
I think it would have been a crisis, but it would have probably forced some actual diplomacy, actual negotiations, because at the end of the day, Russia's war gamed out this to great detail. They know exactly how it's going to play out. I'm sure NATO has done the same. So all of the drills, all of the rhetoric, all of the talking, all the posturing really doesn't amount to much when you come down to it. Both sides do not want anything near a shooting war. It's not in Russia's interest, certainly not in Ukraine's interest, and it's definitely not in any European country's interest, except maybe those countries that are just far away enough that they won't be directly affected by
and have a powerful military-industrial base.
Yeah, and who can profit heavily off the crisis. I'm not going to go into details, but you know who we're talking about there.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Okay. Well, look, we're going to end with this, and just a quick comment about the announcement that Nissan is going to build a new generation of all-electric vehicles in Sunderland, alongside a new gigafactory from Envision AESC. It's a major vote of confidence in the UK, apparently, and our highly skilled workers in the Northeast. Who said that? Well, Boris Johnson on Twitter. So what has Nissan announced? Well, it's a £1 billion